and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be painting some loose florals. I'm thinking maybe some peonies and tulips, and I kind of want to do a light background. This is just going to be a talking through my process and explaining what I'm doing as I'm doing it. So I have some ultramarine blue, some cerulean, then I'm also putting some yellow light Hansa and some cadmium yellow medium. So these are all Liquitex soft body acrylics, and I'm just using some acrylic paper by Winsor and Newton. So instead of a canvas, this is a nice alternative because it's great for practicing. It doesn't have the kind of pressure that you might get with a canvas. Okay, so I'm just mixing this here, and I'm just gonna start by creating some odd shapes. This is going to be loose and just give off the impression of the flower, I think. So I'm just trying to think where I want my peonies to go. I think I want a peony here, one there, and maybe another one here. So do some big leaves, maybe add in some yellow, and then kind of do some different shapes. Always feel kind of works better when you change the shapes. I'm using just a flat brush, so nothing too special, and I'll probably stay with this brush the whole way through. So what I'm actually doing is kind of just creating where my flowers are going to go, because they're going to be white peonies, I think. Okay, and now I'm going to do some ultramarine with the yellow free medium and just bring in some warmth. I've kind of been experimenting with different colors, and I think it's always a good idea to use a warm color and then also a cool color. So cadmium yellow medium would be my warm, and the yellow light Hansa would be my cool yellow. And the same for the blue. I've got my cool blue and my warm blue, so I can also just take that and add. And so this way you get kind of all of these different green shades. Okay, so I'm kind of happy with that. I'm going to go in with a bit of the background now. I've just got my jar of water, and always like to have on handy with acrylic is just any old rag, and I will use my brush to get rid of any water. For ease of use, I'm going to be using this light pink by Liquitex again, and I think I'm going to mix this with a bit of white, just then I think maybe a tiny bit of burnt sienna, just to mute it down just a dot. And I'm gonna go by mixing, but not mixing too much. I'm just kind of gonna like that, and then I think I'm gonna just start by filling in all of the spaces around. Probably needs a little bit more white, actually. It's a bit too pink. Trying to remember where the flower's gonna go, because obviously white on white we won't be able to see the peonies, so I have to kind of block color around them, which I like to do. We've also got to create an off-white color for the peonies so they can also have some kind of shade. Okay, that's okay for this first layer. We can always go over that later. I'm gonna clean out my brush go in with my off-white color, and I'm going to do this by mixing a red, yellow and blue. So just tiny dot, because we don't want the color to be too strong, of Quinacridone red. I'm also going to go in with Ultramarine Blue. I can take that from my, and the yellow I'm going to use Cadmium Yellow, so that's fine. So I'm literally going to grab it off with my brush, and I'm going to mix. You're going to get this kind of, if it's kind of green, I'm going to add in more blue, and then if it gets kind of muddy, I'm going to add in a tiny bit of red. And then tiny bit more of yellow. Maybe some, we just kind of want to make a off gray, I guess. So you get it by kind of mixing colors together and just seeing. It's a bit too brown. I definitely want a bit more gray, so I'm going to add more blue, and so that's going to cool it down a bit. So you can see now I've kind of got this off-white color, but it can use a touch more of blue, so I'm going to put the blue there and grab it, and so I do want it to kind of be off blue, like a shade. Okay, so that's my off-white color, and I'm gonna now go in for these peonies. So peonies, just it's a bit too dark actually. So I'm just thinking whether I want my petals to be really small or whether I want them to be more kind of large in size. Okay, so I'm gonna kind of just start by any kind of shape that's going to give off the impression of the flower. So peonies tend to be darker in the center and then get lighter as you kind of go out, but again, it doesn't have to be perfect, it just needs to be what you want it to look like. That's the fun thing with abstract. Kind of doesn't really have to look like anything, but it can also look like something at the same time. Okay, I think I can start adding white into that now. Get a bit lighter. I'm gonna try and keep this video under not 10 minutes, under 20 minutes. Okay, so kind of okay, and then I think I might let that dry. And go in with some green. I'm going with some Cerulean Blue and And don't be afraid to put leaves on top of the flowers. It's just going to make it, it's going to frame the flower more and give it a better impression. Okay, I'm gonna leave this dry now because I kind of like where it's going and I don't want to ruin it. So I'm gonna let it dry and come back. Okay, now I've mixed a dark green with some ultramarine and added some red to kind of darken up the edges, and I'm kind of going to go in where I can see spaces that need to be filled out, and I'm going to add in some greenery, just some shadow around the flowers. Anything that can give contrast is going to add more definition. Okay, so okay, and then I'm going to clean my brush and I'm going to go in with a light brown green, a light green. I'm going to go for Hansa Yellow and mix that in with my Cerulean Blue. So the brighter you want your green, the more yellow you want to mix in. And then if you want to mute it a little bit, so everything is a bit too bright, you can just grab some red. Well, that was a bit too much red. And that's going to give you a more earthy toned green. It's more earthy tone than I would like, so I'm going to go in with some white, just to now lighten up the color. And get some I kind of like being able to see through a little bit. I think it makes it interesting to be able to see the texture of the canvas or the canvas paper behind. So I'm going to not double down with layers to make it super thick and stay with that. And then I'm going to go in with white now for my flowers. Just cleaned off my brush, still using the same brush, so now I can kind of add in some definition on top of more white. I'm just going to add in little peaks of white amongst the flowers. You can see that white going on top really kind of brings it all together. I'm going to go for a heavy body acrylic as well. This is by Meeden. And just has a bit more texture to it. I'm going to double down on those strokes. You don't want to cover all of the shadow layer that we put underneath. And kind of like to see, take a step back. I feel like with paintings you kind of just, you get a feeling of when it's done and when it needs a little bit more. And I am definitely getting the feeling that it's pretty much done. I mean, you can go over with the pink. I have some left on my palette, so you could just go in and create a more complete background. So just going around the leaves and giving it more of a polished look. And sometimes what I like to do is take my, I just need some white, is the color of the background so that it matches through with the color and it kind of connects with all the colors, is kind of go in and anywhere where I can see some kind of open space, a little bit of white, I will just go in and put through the color of the background. And I just think this in a very subtle way ties in the painting, as if there are some gaps between the flowers where you can then see what it looks like. So kind of like this more lighter pink. I just remember when I first started painting and was looking for more abstract and looser interpretations, it's quite hard. There isn't that much on the internet. I think you have to like really find an artist that you connect with and then either do their course, but I've never been able to find when I was learning. And so I just kind of kept on experimenting on my own and kind of came up with what works for me. So I think we're done. I am pretty happy with how that turned out. And with this now, I can just let it dry and it'll come off. And this is by Winsor & Newton, and I can have this framed. So this is a painting that I will actually go on to sell and have it on my website. So painting on canvas paper doesn't necessarily mean you can't turn it into something that you can gift or put, you know, sell if you're an artist who sells your artwork. So it's not just purely for hobby, because these papers are incredible, and it just means that they go in a frame instead of hanging on their own. So I hope you liked today's very kind of chilled and laid back talk through. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.